Sometimes the biggest regrets aren't the things we did, they're the moments we let pass. Welcome to If I Could Say One More Thing, a podcast where unfinished stories find a voice. Each episode, we share a moment someone didn't get to explain, revisit, or complete until now. Some stories are tender, some are bittersweet, and some are quietly life-changing. Because some moments don't really end, they echo in silence, in memory, and in the choices we make after the moment is gone. Some moments in life don't arrive with fanfare, no drum roll, no flashing sign that says, "This is it. This could change everything." In today's story, we meet Sam, who didn't sing one night with a girl named Annie. Not because he didn't want to, but because he couldn't get past the voice in his head that told him he'd mess it up, that he wasn't that guy, that it wouldn't matter. But he was wrong, and the duet he never sang, it stayed with him. This is a story about missed joy, about what it feels like when self-consciousness steals the mic, and about the songs and people that live in the spaces we were too afraid to step into. This is the karaoke duet that never happened. It was a Wednesday, which in most corners of the world is an unremarkable event. In my town, it was also wing night at the Hungry Lobster, a seafood bar that smelled like chicken grease and desperation. But on that particular Wednesday, something rare occurred. Someone invited me out. I was just finishing my shift at the community library, where my job was to reshelve books no one had checked out since the Clinton administration, when Annie, yes, that Annie, the one with the laugh that made you forget why you were sad, appeared beside the return slot. "We're doing karaoke at the Lobster. You in?" she asked, popping a jelly bean into her mouth like an exclamation point. In, 2 letters, 1 syllable. That's all it would have taken. Instead, I cleared my throat. Me? I don't really, I'm not much of a singer." "You don't have to be," she grinned. "It's karaoke. That's the whole point. Come on. I'm doing Islands in the Stream, and I need a Kenny to my Dolly." Her hand was still sticky from jelly beans, and I might have leaned a little closer than necessary when she offered me a flyer from the corkboard. I read it twice, once for the details, and once to delay the answering. I'll think about it," I said, the coward's version of no. And that should have been the end. But of course, it wasn't. What happened next is something I hesitated to confess because it confirms every stereotype about introverted 20-somethings who sleep in band t-shirts, rehearse conversations in their heads, and have a mild codependent relationship with their Spotify Discover Weekly. I went. Not immediately. First, I went home, ate 3 hard-boiled eggs, changed shirts twice, and Googled how to impress a girl during karaoke. A surprising number of people recommended meatloaf. Then, at precisely 9:37 p.m., late enough to seem like I hadn't been waiting all day, I entered the Hungry Lobster. The place was dimly lit in that overly ambitious way bars try to manufacture intimacy. A disco ball spun sadly above a makeshift stage, casting fractured rainbows on bowls of peanuts. And there she was, Annie, wearing a sunny yellow sweater and jeans that look like they've been custom fit by angels. She spotted me and waved. "Hey, you made it," she said. "You ready to sing?" Now, this is where the story should take a different turn. This is where I grab the mic, belt out Islands in the Stream with more sincerity than talent. And she laughs, and maybe there's a hand on a shoulder or a harmonized note that lingers just a beat too long. This is where the spark is lit. And people later say, "Remember that duet they did?" As if it were a prophecy. But that's not what happened. Instead, I laugh nervously. Maybe I'll watch a round or two first. And then I sat down, far away, at a table with poor visibility and worst acoustics. I ordered a Sprite and pretended to read the coaster. She sang without me. I watched her take the stage alone, Dolly without Kenny, Sunshine without Shadow. Her voice wasn't technically perfect, but who cared? She owned the room, and when she glanced toward the crowd, toward me, I raised my glass in a weak salute, which felt like holding up a white flag made of carbonated cowardice. She never asked me again. Now, if I were a better man, or even a slightly less neurotic one, I would have told myself it was no big deal. Just one song, just one night. But in the days that followed, the song kept playing in my head. And then, as happens when you feed an idle imagination with too many what-ifs, I began to replay the evening differently. In the version I invented while brushing my teeth, I did go up. I stood beside her, our names called out, our breaths held in tandem. The karaoke screen lit up with the first words, and though I missed the key by a generous margin, she beamed at me like I was Luciano Pavarotti in a flannel shirt. We sang, "Islands in the Stream." That is what we are. My voice cracked slightly, and she laughed, but not in the mocking way, in a way that said, "You're ridiculous, and I like you for it." Halfway through, she reached for my hand, not romantically, not yet. Just enough to anchor us to the song. We swayed, out of rhythm but in sync. The crowd whooped, the disco ball spun more purposefully. And when it ended, when the applause came like polite thunder, we turned to each other and smiled that smile. You know the one. The smile that says, something just shifted. In this alternate version, we stayed out until 2 a.m. We walked home slowly. She teased me for flubbing the lyrics, and I confessed that I'd practice in front of my toaster. She told me about her terrible ex, and I listened, not to fix it, but to honor the telling. Eventually, I asked her to dinner, not as a date, just two people who happened to like lyrics and linguine. She said yes. And so began a slow, lovely, messy friendship that curled toward love, like a vine looking for light, all because of a duet. But of course, that's not how it happened. In reality, she sang with someone else the next week. A guy with a soul patch and a voice that didn't deserve her vibrato. He was confident in the way people are when they've never been told no, and she laughed at his jokes, even though they weren't funny. I faded into the background like the instrumental track of a B-side nobody requested. She still smiled when she saw me at the library, but it was a generic kindness, like the kind you'd offer a helpful stranger who once passed you a stapler. Eventually, she stopped coming in altogether. I don't know where she went. People leave small towns quietly, like balloons slipping from children's fingers. I tried dating again. I even downloaded an app that promised to connect deep thinkers who love bookstores and board games. My first match was a woman named Sandra who wanted to meet at a reptile cafe. We lasted 23 minutes. But Annie, she stayed with me. Or, more precisely, the possibility of her did. I kept imagining that version of my life, the one that began with a missed lyric and ended in a chorus of shared groceries and half-watched documentaries. And I wondered, what if I hadn't let self-consciousness hold the mic? It's funny how insecurity doesn't announce itself. It doesn't wear a name tag or clear its throat. It just quietly pulls up a chair, pats your back, and whisper, maybe you should sit this one out. And if you're not careful, you listen. Not just once, but over and over, until the whole soundtrack of your life is shaped by songs you never sang. There's an art to missed joy. It leaves no mess, no fingerprints, only a gentle ache where a memory might have lived. And the worst part? No one else notices. To them, it's just a night you didn't sing. But to you, it's the night everything might have changed. Years later, I still think about her. Not constantly, not even often, but every now and then I'll be in a grocery store and hear the opening bars of Islands in the Stream over the speakers. And for a moment, I'm back there at the Hungry Lobster, the lights low, the mic warm, her hand outstretched, a world waiting on the edge of a note. And I whispered the words just under my breath, like a prayer I forgot to say aloud. Islands in the stream, that is what we are. What a strange, heartbreaking thing to miss. A duet I never sang with a girl who would have let me. Some stories stay with us, not because of what was said, but because of what wasn't. The things we almost did, the words we nearly spoke, the songs we never quite sang. Before we move into the conversation, just a gentle reminder. For privacy and respect, all names in this story have been changed, but the feelings and the ache behind them are very real. Here's my interview with Sam, the person who almost lived this. Sam, thank you for being here. You just listened to your story I wrote based on the moment you shared with me. How did it feel hearing it brought to life like that?
Honestly, strange, beautiful, a little like watching someone open a box you'd sealed shut for years. You told it with such care. Even the small stuff, the glances and hesitations. It was surreal to hear it, especially because I've tried not to replay that night for a long time, but clearly, it never left me.
I'm sure your story will hit a nerve for a lot of people. You know, that moment when self-consciousness takes the wheel and steers you away from something joyful. And I think the obvious question from our listeners is, why didn't you just get up and sing?
Gosh, I wish I had a good answer. I think fear dressed itself up as logic. Like, don't embarrass yourself.
Mm-hmm.
She's just being nice. What if you ruin the moment instead of making it weird? It happened in a split second, but that second stuck around for years. I was 27 then, and it still echoes.
Was it about Annie specifically, or more about what singing represented?
Both, I guess. I mean, Annie, she was magic, like sunshine in a cardigan. But singing, that was about letting someone see me, hear me, in a way that felt completely exposed. No clever joke, no sarcastic shield, just me. And that terrified me.
I wrote a version of that night the way you said you often imagined it, where you actually did sing, where something changed. Do you think it really could have gone that way?
I do. And that's what guts me, honestly. It wasn't a fantasy. It was possible. She asked. She invited me. All I had to do was stand up and walk toward her.
Mm-hmm.
That's the part that eats at me. It wasn't some big leap. Just one step. And it's not that I think we would have ridden off into the sunset or anything, but it could have been the start of something. A friendship, a spark, anything. And instead, I just stayed seated.
There's a line in the story I wrote where I say, there's an art to missed joy. It leaves no mess, no fingerprints, only a gentle ache where memory might have lived. I'm curious. Are there other missed joys in your life that echo that same way?
Yeah, there are, big and small, but this one feels like the blueprint for all the others. Like it taught me how to miss things. That ache, it's real. I didn't make it up. It's the shape of a moment that never got to exist.
Do you think you were in love with her?
I don't know if it was love, exactly, but when she looked at me, I felt like the kind of man I wanted to grow into. Back then, I was just some quiet guy shelving books, keeping to myself. But with her, I felt like more than that. Like I could be someone worth standing next to. It wasn't some wild dream. That night could have gone a whole other way. She gave me a real chance, and I let it pass me by.
If by some small chance Annie hears this, what would you want her to know?
I'd say, I'm sorry I didn't meet you on that stage, and I'd thank her for seeing something in me that I didn't see in myself yet. That meant more than she probably realized.
Do you still sing, Sam?
Not publicly, no, but sometimes in the car. And every now and then, if Islands in the Stream comes on the radio, I do both parts.
Aw.
Kenny and Dolly, poorly, but with feeling.
Thank you, Sam, for sharing your story and for letting me write it. But before we go, I always ask, if you could say one more thing to your 27-year-old self, the guy who stayed seated that night, what would it be?
I'd lean in close and say, you're not an imposter. You're invited. Get up. You ain't got to be perfect, son. You just got to show up when it matters. That's it. She didn't want a performance. She wanted a moment, and you could have had it. Sometimes joy shows up with a mic and a yellow sweater, and you don't get a second verse.
Some moments pass us by quietly, but their absence hums beneath everything that follows. And sometimes, the only way to make peace with what we didn't say is to say it now. If a story is stirring in you, something unfinished, unsaid, or almost, I hope you'll send it my way. You can write to SayOneMoreThingPod at gmail.com. And if you're holding this episode a little close, maybe someone else needs to hear it too. I'm Andrea Applewick, and this is If I Could Say One More Thing.